Hello and welcome to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream live here on the Adobe Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Adobe. Today we're going to be getting back to our photography topics, and today we're going to start it off with a question that often comes up, especially those who, and it's not only new people, it's sometimes people that have been using products for many years and they question why they should maybe be using a different product or if they're using the right product to do the right thing. So today we're going to be talking about the differences between Adobe Bridge CC, Adobe Lightroom CC, and Adobe Photoshop CC. And why they're, two products that kind of almost do the same thing in some respects, but in many respects they don't. And more importantly, when to use one versus the other. So I get this question all the time. I'm a photographer. I've been using Photoshop for as long as I can remember, and I've been using Bridge since the CS days when Bridge first came out. Why would I use Lightroom? Or I get this from a Lightroom user. Hey, I'm using Lightroom. I like what Lightroom does. It manages my photos. I can edit my photos. Why would I ever use Photoshop? And I'll get from a Photoshop user, hey, I'm using Photoshop for everything. Why would I ever even need Lightroom? What does Lightroom do? So I get those questions all the time from all different users at different levels, at different parts of their photography workflows. So today I'm going to attempt to tackle when to use one versus the other. And the answer usually is it depends on what you're doing. There usually isn't a blanket, always you do this, always use this app, always do it this way. Well, usually there isn't. There's a couple examples where there will be, but for the most part, it will depend on what you're doing. Now, having used Bridge since day one, as a matter of fact, I wrote the first Bridge book. I wrote a book on Bridge back when Bridge 1.0 came out. So I know Bridge quite well. I've been using Bridge for many, many, many years. But when Lightroom came out, I no longer used Bridge as part of my photography workflow because Lightroom is just so much better at handling photos and doing more with my photos than Bridge will ever do. Now, does that mean I never use Bridge again or anymore? Nope, I still use Bridge for the things that Bridge is good at, for the things that Bridge is good at that Lightroom will probably never do. And that gets more into the design workflows. So there are times when I have Bridge open. There are times when I have Lightroom open. And I always have Photoshop open. So it just depends on what it is I need to do. So if you can imagine, especially as a Creative Cloud member, you've got this toolbox. Even if you're a Creative Cloud Photography Plan member, you still have access to all three tools. You have access to Photoshop, latest version all the time, Bridge, and Lightroom. So you can still take advantage of today's topic, even if you're just on a photography plan, because even the photography plan members can download Bridge. If you're a photography plan member, there probably won't be as much use for Bridge, which again, we'll get into that. But for everyone else that's not only just a photographer, but maybe you do some design work as well, that's where Bridge kind of shines and comes in. Let's see. Yeah, I write books. I use this stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Vicky. And I should do my usual addressing people that are watching this as a video on demand on the Twitch channel, or you're watching this replay later on my YouTube channel. No matter how you're watching this as a replay, note that this is or was a live show that happened on Tuesday, June 28th at 10 a.m. I'm on live on Tuesdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. Eastern till noon Eastern. And because it is a live show, that means there are people in my chat or my chat pod that are live, that are talking, commenting, asking questions. And from time to time, I'll look over and I'll say things like, hey, Alan Reed, how's it going? Hey, Vicky, hey, Victoria, because those people are now, they're the most recent people in my chat that said something. And sometimes if it's a question, since I know on YouTube especially, you guys won't be able to see the question, I'll do my best if I'm answering their question to repeat it. No one, sweetie, hello. In the beginning, I usually do shout outs like that if I see a person and they say hello. Hello, Erica Drayton. Let's see here. Ayuri. Right off the bat, there's a question. Photoshop can do anything that Lightroom can do in terms of edits and effects, right? Almost. Not everything, but almost. And we'll get into that. So that's the whole point of today's questions just like that. Master of Doomies, hello, and hello, Ewan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, like I said, from time to time, I'll look over the chat, I'll see questions, I'll do my best to answer them as we go. And I may do what I just did in terms of answering the Photoshop versus Lightroom question and kind of hold it off a little bit because that is exactly some of the stuff that we're going to cover. So I don't want to give that a blanket yes. I'm going to give it a 98, 99% yes to answer your question. There are a couple of things in Lightroom in particular, as far as editing and effects are concerned, that are just better suited in Lightroom than they are in Photoshop/Camera Raw. All right, so with that said, why don't we go ahead and dive in? And again, we'll be alternating between all three applications as I need to. Hey, GoBJ69. And as I need to alternate, I will talk about the reason I switched over to a different program. Usually it's to show something that came up in the chat or show something that popped up in my head as to why you would maybe be in this application or that application to do something. All right, so with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and switch to my computer. And now that you can see my computer, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of each of the applications in terms of just the user interface, give you kind of a quick description of what the application was originally intended for and what it's being used for now, and then start showing some uses as to when you would use one versus the other. All right, so Jan, hello, was that Jiraj 623, hello as well. And let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so I'm in Lightroom, but I'm actually going to switch over to Bridge first. So let's go to Bridge. Now, Bridge is and always has been a file browser. And that's really the definition that sets it apart from Lightroom. Lightroom is managing photos or picture formats using a database called a catalog. It's your Lightroom catalog. Bridge, on the other hand, is simply looking at what's in a folder and showing you what's in that folder. It doesn't remember folder by folder. It doesn't remember day to day. Like, for example, if I go in a folder right now and look at stuff and then come back tomorrow and that stuff is different, if I point to the folder, it will show me the different stuff, but it won't remember what was there yesterday. So Bridge, think of it as a real-time file browser. That's what it does. So for example, if I were to go to this folder called Auckland HDR Training and I were to drag this folder to Bridge, Bridge will take me to the folder and show me the contents of that folder. That's it. That's what it does. So I can, and then now, once we get in here, there are all kinds of things I can do once I'm looking at that folder, but I didn't have to import anything. I didn't have to launch a catalog or anything like that. I just go to a folder and look at it, and I can start messing with the stuff in the folder. I didn't have to do anything special other than point Bridge to the folder. Now, I pointed it to the folder by dragging a folder on top of the icon. I could have just as easily gone up here and navigated to the folder if I wanted to do it that way. I could have done a search and maybe found the items that I'm looking for and then gotten to that folder. So there's lots of ways to get in and around. I think I can even do it from the file menu as well. Let's see, can I do it that way? No, I don't want to do it that way yet. Okay, anyway, I can get to the folder a number of different ways, and then Bridge will show me what's in it. Now, These aren't proxies, smart previews, or any of that. These are the actual files in that folder. And here's one of the differences, one of the big differences where Bridge comes in and is more handy than maybe using Lightroom or even Photoshop. Since Bridge can see what's in a folder, it's not limited to photography formats. Lightroom is designed to be a photography tool. Therefore, it's limited to JPEGs, TIFFs, RAW files, of course, DNGs as part of RAW files, PNGs, and that's pretty much about it. Bridge, on the other hand, can see Illustrator files, it can see InDesign files, it can see PDFs, it can see all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't have in a photography workflow. So Lightroom, built from the ground up to be this tool to manage your photography. Bridge, built from the ground up to be this tool to look at files. That's the difference. All right, so for example, now I opened up a folder. These are all RAW files. And Bridge is letting me see all of these RAW files. That's great. But if I point to a different folder, let me go to my actual demo files folder over here, where I've got some Illustrator files. Let me see what's in here from a file format standpoint. Great. All right, so if I drag this folder on top of the Bridge icon, it's showing me everything that's in there, including the zip file and some invisible files, which I'm going to turn that off for the sake of example. But it's showing me folders and files and different folders. So, for example, I couldn't ever see a zip file in Lightroom. Lightroom would never import it. It would just ignore it because it's not a photography file format. If I go into this folder, and then actually that's not the one I want. Let me go back one. If I go into this folder, here we go. I see a couple thumbnails. I see one for a PDF. I see one for an Illustrator file. And as you saw in a couple seconds, it actually rendered the previews of those files. So I can actually see the PDF. And more importantly, I can even thumb through it over here in the preview window. So I can actually dig deeper. Maybe I have two PDFs that look the same on the cover, but I actually want to drill down into pages to see what they actually are. And again, didn't have to import anything, didn't have to tell it to, wait for a progress bar or anything. I just pointed to a folder and it started seeing what was in it. I don't have to open up these files to see what they are. So for example, if I go to this Illustrator file, this one has multiple artboards, I'm assuming. And yep, I'm flipping through the artboards of an Illustrator file. And I don't even have Illustrator open on my drive right now. So if I look down here at the dock, which I could probably make a little smaller here. I'd have to do it over there actually. But anyway, I don't have Illustrator open, take my word for it. So even though Illustrator is not open, I can still flip through these artboards in this file and see what's there. So I'm browsing files. That's what Bridge is great at. And that's why I still use it. Because there are times, guess what, when I'm not working on photography. And there are times where I need to see things without having to open everything up. So if I'm looking for something, good morning, Echo Seth, Bridge is a great tool for letting me see what's in there. For example, I don't remember what's in this secondary assets folder. So I can open it up and I can see some assets that are in here. I see some icons, and these are all Illustrator files. So the same thing would apply to InDesign files. The same thing would apply to photography files, of course. The same thing would apply to even video files. So I can use this to preview videos, and they would show up in the preview window and I could play them and look at them. All right, so here's a question right off the bat. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so the question is, Jan's asking, and this is kind of a critique of Lightroom, but he's right for the most part. He's saying, since Lightroom is not that great at handling a vast amount of video and handling their metadata correctly, is Bridge far better in terms of browsing them and adding keywords? Browsing, yes. Adding keywords it starts to get a little dicey because it really just depends on the video format. So I don't want to give you a blanket, yes, it can, but I would say as far as being better suited than Lightroom, yes, it is better suited for looking at, let's say, a whole folder of video, and then, depending on the format, applying things to it like keywords. So, and to answer your question, yes, it is better suited, but I don't want to give you a blanket, oh yeah, use it for everything, all your keywords, it'll all work, because it will definitely depend on the video format. Someone else asked, Premiere and After Effects files too. Let me go, actually, to a point. I want to go here, 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 here. I'm just navigating manually just to show that this can be done. So now I'm on my desktop, and I can see all my desktop files. And there was one that I was going to show if I had it here. There it is, Twitch videos. We open it up. So, in terms of your Premiere and After Effects files, it doesn't browse, it doesn't preview the project file. It's a little complicated for it to do that. Because in the project file, for example, in Premiere or After Effects, you could have multiple compositions, multiple timelines, multiple sequences, and lots of things that are unrendered. So it would have to take on a lot to be able to preview your Premiere and After Effects files. Now, so this is what happens when you go to a Premiere folder. It will show it to you, but it won't, like, if I click on that Premiere project, it won't actually preview the videos in that project. There could be 50 timelines and all kinds of things that I would have to go through to look at. And while Bridge is great, it's not that great. All right. All right, so here's another one. Thank you. Lightroom does not read my video date created date, and so it renames it incorrectly too with the year, month, date template. Bridge saw the correct date right away. Okay, well there you go, Jan, you got it. So again, that was, now right there, what Jan just said is a perfect example of one versus the other. In other words, it's not a matter of winner take all. It's not a matter of let's defeat the other one. It's a matter of when to use one versus the other. That's why I said both are still in my dock. Both are still used. Now, as far as my workflows are concerned, I'm in Lightroom probably 90 to 100% of the time, where I'm in Bridge maybe 5 to 10% of the time. I'm rarely launching Bridge. Like I'll go days, weeks, or maybe even months without launching Bridge, because I don't always have a project that requires me to have to look at a folder of things. But when I do, I'm firing up Bridge, because it'll be quicker, easier, faster than having to dig through in the operating system or having to open up all the applications and preview things that way. So for that standpoint, and yes, Sissy Foss is one of the things I answered earlier. Bridge CC is absolutely included in the photography plan. So as a photography plan member, you have access to Photoshop, Lightroom, and Bridge CC, as well as Lightroom Mobile for syncing, and Portfolio as well for creating your portfolio website. So photography plan gives you quite a bit for the $9.99 a month on average that it costs. Okay. So since it's like a browser, I get to browse also from the pull-down menus here. I get to also go back and back and back and back, just like your web browser does. So it keeps a history of the things that are here. Here's an Easter egg or a shortcut that most people don't know. Is you see the bread, we call these, or in tech, they call these breadcrumbs. They show you the path of where you are right now. So all the way from my computer to my volume called Expanse, to my demo files. Hang on there. Sorry, I didn't turn off the notifications for this device. So let's do that real quick. Sorry about that. dog is letting me also know that someone's at the door. All right, so anyway, turn notifications off, and therefore we won't hear that one again. Anyway, I'm seeing these breadcrumbs across all the way to where I am now. And if you notice, there's these little widgets in front of each folder. Well, that's actually navigation. So if you hold your mouse button down on those, you can actually navigate inside of any of those folders to get to any subfolders. So I forgot, oh yeah, okay, I forgot what we call this, and it just showed me. We call this folder cruising. So you can folder cruise from any one of these to get to anything else. So for example, I'm in my CC demo files, in my Illustrator CC, in my June 2016 assets, and my secondary assets. Well, I know in my demo files folder, I've got other folders. So if I go there instead and I want to jump over to my InDesign folder, I can jump over to my InDesign folder from there, and I can either click stop folder cruising or keep going. And if I keep going, let's do this. And then I can just jump out of it or stop it. So once again, I'm seeing, so John's asking me, have I tried Bridge on a Surface Book? I get really tiny fonts. I have not tried that on a Surface Book, but I know that across the board, the teams are addressing high DPI displays and creating workspaces that make everything bigger on a high DPI display. So John, I haven't checked Bridge yet to see if that workspace or those preferences exist, but you're welcome to go check now, and if not, just stay tuned. I know all the teams are focused on making the products look good on those newer displays that have higher resolution, and therefore so everything won't be tiny. But Bridge may already have that. Again, I just haven't checked. All right. Okay, so Jan's asking, or Jan says, thanks. I don't get all the hate that Bridge gets. There's a reason, for example, Scott Kelby, my friend, says, there's a reason why it's free, making a joke about it. But I love Bridge. It's fantastic for what it does. And usually the hate from Bridge / the Lightroom debate is anytime there's hate, it's always because there are people that fear the other thing they're not using, or they don't understand, or they don't, they don't see why they should use it. It's like they feel like they're being threatened. Oh my God, they're going to take the thing I use every day and make me use this other thing. So a lot of that hate, Jan, comes from, I would say, probably 99 to 100% the photography community, because in the early days, it was Photoshop and Bridge. Then Lightroom came out, and then of course, a segment of the Bridge users moved over to Lightroom, and they started using Lightroom, and they're poo-pooing on Bridge. Oh, Bridge doesn't do half the things Lightroom does in a photography workflow. And so that's where a lot of it comes from, because people get really defensive about what they're using and don't want anyone to tell them they should or have to be using something else. I've always taken a stance of any of these tools as their tools. Since I get both, I get Lightroom and Bridge, why don't I use the right one for the right job? So if you were to ask me and say, hey, which one should I use from a photography standpoint, then I'm going to tell you Lightroom. And I could even show you, dozens of reasons why. But if you say, well, then does that make Bridge a bad product? I'm going to say no, because Bridge was never just for photography workflows. Bridge was for design workflows. And yes, it had a lot of photography stuff in it, like Camera Raw and all the other stuff, because there wasn't anything else at the time. So the Bridge team put all that stuff in. Now that we have Lightroom, there's not as much reason for a photographer to use Bridge now that we have Lightroom, especially if you're in a photography plan, because you get them both. So use whichever one you want. I personally don't care. Use either one, or use them both like I do when the time comes. But it's really a matter of what's best for the job. And so in that case, if you were to ask me, and I'll restate it one more time, which is best for a photographer's workflow, I'm going to always say Lightroom. If you say, which is best, Lightroom or Bridge, then I'm going to ask you, what are you doing? If you say, hey, I'm a graphic designer, then I'm going to say, well, for the most part, Bridge is going to be great for what you do. If you say I'm a photographer, then I'm going to say, for the most part, Lightroom is going to be better for what you do. So it just really depends on what you're doing. I always used Bridge with using Photoshop, B. Dungan is saying. With Lightroom, I don't need as much. Exactly, same here. That's why I said Lightroom is open 90 to 100% of the time on my computer, where Bridge I may open once a month, once every couple of months, because I don't need it as often. Are there other CC plans other than the photography plan? Yes, there's the full membership that includes everything. So those are the two, and there's also point product plans. So in other words, if I just want Photoshop, or I shouldn't say Photoshop because that's a bad example. If I just want InDesign, I can just have a membership that includes only InDesign. So yes, there are multiple plans. There's student plans, there's team plans, there's corporate plans, there's tons of plans. And I think Victoria just put the link up. Okay, so again, back to Bridge. I'm here in InDesign and I'm seeing InDesign files, PDFs, and again, even on the InDesign file, if there were previews saved, I can page through the InDesign file. Now, here's just a note when it comes to InDesign in particular. I know for a fact this InDesign document has more than 2 pages. But I'm only seeing 2 pages in Bridge, and this will be the case by default, because in InDesign, by default, when you save, or in your preferences, when you save, there's a checkbox or an option to tell it to save previews for all the pages or just the first 2. And if you don't change that preference, all your InDesign files in Bridge will only show page 1 and page 2 of a multi-page InDesign file. If you have 20 pages, you'll never see them in Bridge because that default only generated a preview for the first 2 pages. So I usually go in on a new install and change that default to generate the previews for all pages. It might take a few extra seconds to save. It might take a few extra kilobytes of space, but it's definitely worth it. All right, just checking here. I think I saw a comment I wanted to look at real quick. Hold on. It scrolled by on my other monitor, so I'm having to go back and look at it. All right, I see a question on the cache, previews and cache. I'm going to answer that one in just a second. Hold on. Admiral Shane says, I use both Lightroom and Bridge for different uses as you stated. It would be ideal if Lightroom and Bridge read metadata the same way. Well, they do for the most part. You'd have to give me an example of when they don't, other than video. I thought I saw a different one though. Okay, here's a question on, do you think it's wise to keep 100% previews in cache? If you're referring to Bridge, caching in Bridge is just really it's obviously going to speed it up, but it's really more of a hard drive space thing. So if you've got tons of space, then absolutely there's no reason why you couldn't keep all the caches to speed it up. But I tend to use only the default settings for the cache because I'm just not in Bridge enough to where it matters. Okay, so Jan's also questioning different plans and would like to see a video plan and so forth and so on. And those things are always under consideration. That's all I can say on that. All right, I think I got them all. So Jan's asking, is Photoshop necessary for video work? It's not necessary, but it is one of the ways you can edit video. Okay. So, Admiral Shane, if you're talking about color labels in particular, that is something that my friend on the Lightroom team likes to always blame Bridge for screwing up. So here's what he's talking about. So let's say I go back to, let me go back a couple, all the way back to my images. So let's say I select this image and I go to my labels, and you'll notice that there is no label, and then a label called select, a label called second, a label called approved, and a label called review. I don't know. Okay, let's say it's approved. Well, that ends up being green. What does that mean? So back when color labels first came out, Bridge, of course, could do color labels. It was one of the first products that could. And somewhere along the way, the Bridge team let you define what the colors were called. So instead of that just being called green, by default now it's called approved. And so you're right. Because I can go in and make changes to this, that may not always translate over to Lightroom. Because Lightroom, very stringent, says it's green, it's red, it's blue, it's purple, it's whatever, it's yellow. And it does not translate those names. Now the colors should be the colors, but it does not respect that part of Bridge, because I think they feel that Bridge kind of broke a rule in doing this. So if I go to my preferences and I go to labels, this is where I can go in and change this. So for example, let's say you and I are working together as teammates, and I go in and I say that instead of approved, this is Terry likes. So now I've just made greens, which is true. It's if it's green, it means I like it. But I've just now changed what that means. You may have given it a different name. So now we both open up each other's files. What are we going to see? Are you going to see Terry's like, or Terry likes, or are you going to see what you called green to be? So that's where I agree that they should not have done this way back, back in the day, because it screws it up from a consistency, especially handing it across multiple computers and applications. So that's why color labels in particular, the metadata can get a little weird because of this. And this is something Bridge broke, or I hate saying the word broke, but it's something an issue that they caused way back many years ago. So that's why. And that may be true, Jan. I haven't even looked at it because I try not to touch it for this reason. But yeah, and by the way, now that I've done that, look at what happened. It went to white instead of green because I made that change. So let's change it, see if I can switch it back. Okay, I switched it back, and now it's Terry likes. So a lot of times, because people can make changes in the labeling of the labels, that will also just cause it to throw it off and say, oh, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. I'll just name it white or I'll label it white for now until you figure it out. So color labels, yeah, can get wonky, and I wish that they had not ever mess with it. Just green's green, red's red, blue's blue, and you come up with your own code or color key for what the colors mean, instead of you actually typing in what they are, because that only applies to you, not everyone else. So that's the mess we're in with color labels, and it has been for many years. Because now if you go back and try and fix it, you screw up people's workflows. All right, let's see what else we got here. You're welcome for clarifying, no problem. And all right, moving on. So make sure we got everything else. All right, I think I got everything else I saw. All right, time to keep going. All right, so that, in a nutshell, is what Bridge was designed to do. Now, it has a lot of other features. For example, once I click on an image, for example, it starts to show me the EXIF data or metadata about that file. Anything with a pencil next to it on the right-hand side is something that I can make changes to. So I can go in and say that I want to make changes to, let's see, where do I want to be? I just saw it a second ago. Hang on. Maybe not. There we go. So I can go in and say, hey, this already came in from the file itself because it came in from either my camera or Lightroom. But I can say that I want to go ahead and put my phone number in, my email, my headline, my description. And when I do these things, I'm actually applying the metadata either to the actual file, if the file format supports it, like DNG and JPEG support it, or if it's a proprietary RAW file from your camera, then it would be added as a sidecar file. So this is and by the way, and you can apply the metadata across multiple images. So for example, if I said that these were all, select all, and I want to just say that they're all Auckland, A-U-C-K, without actually changing the names of the images, then I can just say that those are all Auckland, and then they all apply. And when I click out of it, it will ask me, hey, do you want to apply these metadata changes? And I can say, don't show it to me again, but yes, I want to do that. So now the metadata has been written. In this case, since these are DNGs, that metadata is actually in that file. So if I were to import these into Lightroom, or open them up or you would open them up in your copy of Bridge, you should see the word Auckland in the headline. So that was another purpose for Bridge, is the quick and easy ability to add metadata to hundreds or thousands of files all at the same time. Another capability that Bridge was always designated or designed for back in the day was and I'm just trying to see if I have the workspace for it, or do I even have this installed anymore? Hold on for a second here. I want to do I may not have this. There was a module that was a part of Bridge for outputting files. So you could output slideshows, PDFs, things like that. And I know at one point we took that module away, but then allowed you to download it and add it back in. And I just can't remember what state my Bridge is in, whether or not I have that module or workspace or not. And it doesn't appear that I have it, but let's just check just to make sure. Or if not, I'll just skip it and know that that is a possibility that we can do. All right. Now, speaking of workspaces, we were on the Essentials workspace. There's a film strip workspace. There's a metadata workspace for working with your metadata. There's a keywords workspace, so you can go in and start putting in all your keywords or seeing your keywords as well. There is a preview workspace. There is there's a light table workspace. And then there's a folders workspace. So as you can see, Bridge was really designed to be more of a production tool from this standpoint of being able to look at multiple things like this at the same time. I left off on the Essentials workspace, which is where I started. And one of the other things that has been, and again, this has been the point of contention as to why someone, I think Jan said, he didn't understand why there was so much hate, is because since day one, from a photographer standpoint, Bridge has had the ability to work with Camera Raw. So for example, let's say I select these three files, actually this one, and this one. And I now go to my file menu and I choose Open in Camera Raw, or Command R on Mac, Control R on PC. Now it says Open in Camera Raw, so what does that mean? It's going to fire up Photoshop and open it up there? No. Bridge has its own Camera Raw built in. It has the same Camera Raw built in. So if I say Open in Camera Raw, I get a Camera Raw window even if Photoshop wasn't open. And this was another production feature, is that I could go in and I could say, I could grab 1,000 files and have them being processed or exported out via the camera raw here without me having to tie up Photoshop. So I could be working in Photoshop and do it that way, as opposed to having to worry about Photoshop being tied up with its camera raw. So Bridge that was another reason back in the day you would use Bridge. Now again, not as much of a concern because I have Lightroom that can be tied up doing things and even works in the background. So it's not even tied up when it's doing things and processing files the same way with the same features. All right, so for example, I select those 3 files. Did I select them all? Yes, I did. And I go to the flyout menu, and just like I said before, even the merge to HDR, which would be in Camera Raw and in Lightroom, is here. So if I do the merge to HDR, it creates the preview. And then it will, Lightroom grid view, you can go color, select edit, and set your custom ones to match Bridge. Oh, yeah, dang. It shouldn't let me do that, but yeah, I see why they would. Anyway, so Jan, for those of you watching the replay, said, yep, sure enough, in Lightroom, you can go to metadata, menu, color label, set, edit, and there's a checkbox that says, hey, do you want to match Bridge compatibility for the same, so you have them in the same apps, same names. Remember, Terry likes for green. I'm going to say, unless you really want to do that, don't do that. Just leave it the way it is. All right, so anyway, I can have my same options for merging the HDR here, and if I thought something was moving, which in this case something was moving, the boat, I can say give me a deghost, which I also said show me the overlay, so it rebuilds the preview. And welcome Shinagi, if I'm saying that correctly, and glad you studied developing and game design. All right, so still updating the preview. And by choosing deghost, which I've said many times, it allows Lightroom, or I'm used to doing this in Lightroom, it allows, in this case, the HDR merge feature in Bridge or Camera Raw or Lightroom to detect anything that was moving between the 3 shots or 4 shots or 5 shots, whatever it is, and deghost meaning pick one frame for that area. So now that it's done that, I'll go ahead and merge. Again, since it's got to create a new file, you wouldn't even see this dialog box in Lightroom. It would just do it because it knows to create a new file in the same folder. But now it's asking me, where do I want this new HDR it's creating? Do I want it in the same folder? Yes, go ahead and make it. And now it's actually building that file and making my HDR that will now be part of my selection here of the 4 raw files that I now have. So I've got the HDR, I've got all my same sliders and controls, so I can go ahead and make that a little bit more vibrant. Let's do this, let's add a little clarity to it. Let's grab the graduated filter, let's pull that down. Let's make my sky a little bluer. Let's drop the exposure down a little bit, make it a little bit more dramatic. And I can keep going, but once I say done, it's applied that metadata to that new HDR that it just built. So a lot of the same things you'll see here in Bridge that if you're a Lightroom user, you're saying, hey, yeah, that looks a lot like Lightroom. But then there's going to be a ton of things that are in Lightroom that aren't here. So that's why I said it really depends on what you're trying to do. All right, one of the main reasons I was still using Bridge up until the latest version of macOS was for this feature and this feature alone, batch renaming. Now, batch renaming, you're thinking, well, you can do that in Lightroom. You can do that in lots of ways. Why do you need Bridge to do batch renaming? Because the batch renaming in Bridge does something that Lightroom doesn't do. It does like I said, this one feature that I just can't do it the same way in Lightroom. So, for example, let's say I want to rename. We only have the one HDR in this folder, right? But let's say I had 20 HDR images And I want to rename them. I want to get rid of this TLW, whatever the number is, but keep the dash HDR and the rest. So I'll just do it on the one file. But imagine if I had 100, 1,000, 10,000 images that are all a file name and number and then dash HDR. And I just want to get rid of the file name and number part. So what I could do is a batch rename, and Lightroom has, Bridge has this thing that Lightroom doesn't have called string substitution. So what string substitution would allow me to do is replace parts of the name and keep the rest. So I could say, give me string substitution of the original file name and say, take off the underscore TLW and replace it with Twitch. And it would then keep the numbers for everything and the dash HDR for everything. And so actually this one I can do on multiple files. So for example, let's say we want to rename all these. So I want to keep the numbers, but I don't need the dash underscore TLW. So let's batch rename all of these too. Same thing, yep, it kept everything I just did. So it's going to rename 22 files, and it's even giving you a preview of what those 22 files will look like. So if I want a dash or maybe a new underscore, there we go. We'll put that in after the word Twitch. And now I'll have all the original file numbers, which again, that's the part Lightroom doesn't do. Lightroom can do this naming scheme, but it can't keep part of the original name when it does it. That's the one reason why I always did this. All right, so rename, and boom, done. It's also very, very fast. So it just did all of those files, and it could have, like I said, there's only 22 here, but it could have been 2,200, it could have been 22,000. And it would have renamed them all, keeping all their original file names, numbers, file format, but just substitute part of the name. So, yeah, Jan, that's what I said earlier. I said I used to do it in Bridge now, but now I don't have to since the OS has it. All right, so that was one of the main reasons why I was doing it here. What else? I'm just trying to, before we move on to a different product, I just want to highlight any other things that are similar or different that you might want to know about. We did the camera raw thing, cache, Photoshop. All the merging and going out to Photoshop stuff is here, which this is also kind of nice. So for example, let's say that, let's do this. Let's do, again, one of those things that would be very, very difficult to do in Lightroom, if at all. Difficult, or let's say impossible in this case. So let's go back out to computer. Let's go to this folder. And by the way, instead of me having to navigate this the same way all the time, for example, I can type, I could say, let's see, we're here. I can say, take me to the demo files. It did. And instead of me having to do that, I can just drag this over and say, you know what? I never want to have to find that folder again. Just put it over here. I never want to have to find this folder again. Just put it over there. So now I can just click right and get right to it. All right, so let's say we're here. And let's say that also I want to create a contact sheet. I don't really have a lot of things in this folder, but let's say I want to create a contact sheet of this stuff. So what I can do is go to Tools, Photoshop. I think this will work. Now that I'm thinking about it, we'll see. We'll go to Contact Sheet. Hang on, let me actually go back and do it again. Let me select the files. There we go. We'll select those files. Now we'll go to Contact Sheet. Two files selected. I can pick all my options. I'll just leave it on the defaults with the sample or the Myriad Pro text. Click OK. There, it built my document, my 8.5 by 11. And there it is. So see, right off the bat, I got a contact sheet from a PDF, an Illustrator file. It could have been raw files, could have been TIFFs, could have been JPEGs, could have been whatever I wanted, even mixed together. And it would have made the contact sheet in Photoshop from all of those different file formats. Well, in the first place, I wouldn't be able to even get these file formats in Lightroom to do this, even though Lightroom's got a great print module that I can make a contact sheet from. So again, different tools for different jobs. If this is what I needed to do, by all means, if I want to show like the multiple designs for multiple formats on one page, Bridge, quick, easy, is going to let me do it. Even though it used Photoshop to do it, it's going to let me select everything without me having to open it up one by one. So Shanagi is asking, hey, new graphics tablet, guys, which one should I buy? Wacom's got a great intro line, which their Pro products used to be called Intuos. Now the Pro products are called Intuos Pro. So the regular Intuos products are great for intro or entry level. So I would say check out the Wacom Intuos line for entry level tablets. All right, next. No problem. All right, next thing we want to do is we want to go in and, okay, so we've kind of seen what Bridge does. We've kind of seen where it has some nice things, even some advantages over other products. And now let's take a look at where other products would have the advantage. So if I go back to, I should have kept that other folder in here as well. Let's go back to here, actually here. And let's go to Photos. And in Photos, let's say that I want to use, we'll use these. All right, so 3 photos that are bracketed that I can do an HDR from. Now that I got to this place, I don't know why I got here, but I've got these 3 photos, and what was I going to show? I don't remember. All right, we'll move on. Let's go here one more time and show. Stacking, that wasn't it. Okay, I don't remember. All right, let's move on. And let's go to Lightroom. All right, so here I am in Lightroom. Lightroom looks a lot like Bridge from the standpoint of I see thumbnails. The difference is, number one, right off the bat, is that I'm in a catalog. Lightroom, you always have at least one catalog open because you can only have one open at a time anyway, but you're always in a catalog. So I'm in a catalog called TWP Lightroom CC .Lightroom catalog. That catalog is technically a database. And that means that it's keeping track of these images even if these images aren't local. Meaning, let's say I imported a folder from an external hard drive and I unplug that external hard drive. Oops, now that external hard drive is no longer connected to my system. Lightroom would still show the thumbnails. It would still show me everything. Bridge, on the other hand, the minute that folder goes away, poof, your view of that folder goes away. So it would just go back to nothing or the folder before it. So that's one major difference right off the bat, is that I can always see things in Lightroom that Bridge won't show me, because Bridge is a real-time file browser. You're pointing at a folder in real time. It's showing you what's in that folder. You take that folder away, doesn't matter, or it matters because then you won't be able to see what was in that folder once you take the folder away. Lightroom, on the other hand, I'd still be able to see everything. And with Lightroom's smart preview capabilities, I'd even be able to continue editing everything. So that's the other big difference. Whereas we saw Camera Raw inside of Bridge, well, that same Camera Raw feature is called the Develop module inside of Lightroom. Now, Jan asked earlier, well, it's the same, or Photoshop has the exact same capabilities in terms of editing and effects, right, as Lightroom. And remember I said it was, well, 98, 99%, because there are a couple things that you won't have. So for example, let's say I select this file and I want to go over to the Develop module. All right, and let's make it even more interesting. Let's show this file in the Finder. All right, and let me open up that exact same file in Bridge. Where's Bridge? There's Bridge. All right. And it should take me to it if it works correctly, and it did. Great. Okay, so it took me to it, and I'm going to go to Camera Raw here in Bridge. All right, so here I am in Bridge. I'm in Camera Raw. here I am in Lightroom, I'm in the develop module. Same photo, same exact folder. Here's the difference. Or first and foremost, I get a preview window. Well, you might be, and over here in Bridge and Camera Raw and Photoshop, I wouldn't have a preview window. What's the preview window for? The preview window is to preview any presets that are either built in or that I've created. In other words, looks, non-destructive looks that I would want to apply to this photo. So as I hover over it, over these presets, I can see what they're going to do to the photo before I ever click to apply it. And so, for example, here's some third-party ones. Here are some from On1. So if I hover over these, I can see what these will do. That's really going to make the sky or make the whole image a little bluer. And these are all just vibrance ones. Hue, saturation, lightness. Here's some black and white ones. I can see what all of these will do. So for example, I want to jump to and get that particular black and white. Boom, done. Over here in Bridge, or Camera Raw in Photoshop, or Camera Raw in Bridge, I have no presets that come with Camera Raw. I'd have to have snapshots and I have presets, but you notice the preset window is empty. So I'd have to make the black and white first and then save it as a preset so I'd have it later. Whereas all of those presets except the On1 ones came with Lightroom, or except the ones I created, came with Lightroom. And I have a preview window to see what they're going to look like. Even if I then go in, let's say I go in and do it my way. Let's say I go in here and I set it to grayscale, and I know there's some oranges in here, so I mess with the oranges. And I could go back to Lightroom and even get the exact same values for all of these and type them in, and then it will be the exact same black and white. But once I'm done, if I now go to presets and I say make a preset using all of this stuff and call it like On1 black and white, that's what we'll call it. Click OK. Now I've got that preset, and if I were to open up a different photo, I still wouldn't be able to see what that's going to look like until I applied it. So I'd have to go through constantly clicking on every single one. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, that kind of looks good. Let me see the rest. Nope, nope, nope. Whereas over here, or in Lightroom, I can just quickly hover through them and see what I'm going to get. Ooh, I kind of like that. Click that one and get that effect. Is there an easy way to find them, but in ACR, no? Are they not in it? Same thing, Jan. You don't have presets that are there, and B, you'd have to make your own. So there are no presets that come with Camera Raw or Bridge. So that's one big advantage right off the bat, is that in Camera Raw, even if you're working with the adjustment brush, you'd have to then go in and make your own thing, your own settings. And I don't even know if you can make this a preset once you're done. I've never tried that. I've never tried to save a brush preset in Camera Raw because I just don't use the brushes here in Camera Raw very often. So that may be another big distinction between Lightroom and Camera Raw in Photoshop and or Bridge, is that even if I were to make one, I don't know that I could save it. At least I don't see a way to save it without copying and pasting it to another image. That's not going to do it. All right, so there you go. That's another one right off the bat. Well, we like you too, and we hope that you come back after eating your dinner or breakfast or lunch or wherever you are in your part of the world, whatever time it is. All right, so anyway, so thanks for pointing out yet another one, another difference. And again, getting this photo back to its original. The other thing I have here is the history of it, as well as snapshots. So I have the history of everything I've done so far, so I can go all the way back to when it was a color photo and quickly get back to the exact same settings. So back to Jan's original statement. So the effects and editing that's in Lightroom, I can do all of that in Photoshop and slash bridge, right? Yes, you can do it. There's nothing I can do here that I can't do in Camera Raw, except I'd have to do it all manually. So Pearly Cream Cheese is asking, what's new in InDesign? Well, this is not the InDesign day. We had that last week. You're more than welcome to go watch my video on it. So if you head over to terrywhite.tv, there's a video called What's New in the June 2016 Update of InDesign. All right, anyway, back to our story. So we've got, so that answers the question. Yes, technically, I can do, there's nothing I can do in one that I can't do in the other, but one is going to be a lot faster and quicker and easier because of the presets and being able to save the presets and continue working on them, even on brush presets, than in the other. All right, so the other thing is, so we're talking about now the differences, aka advantages, of Lightroom from a photographer standpoint over Bridge slash Camera Raw. So the other one is that you notice here I have a library module, which would be very similar to the thumbnails and everything that you would have in Bridge. So for example, if I go back to Bridge, cancel out of this, I have the ability to go in here and I can put in keywords. Where are my there's my keywords tab. My keywords, I can see the ones that are applied to the photo or add my own. I've got the metadata and all that. I got the same thing here in Lightroom. I've got a keywording window with the ability to put keywords in here. I've got a keyword list and I've got a metadata panel to be able to go in and edit the metadata. So that part, pretty much the same. The difference here is in Bridge, I've got folders and favorites. So the folders show me everything that I've navigated to. The favorites are like those things I drag over here so I can always quickly jump back to a specific place. But what I don't have here are, well, I take that back. You have them, but they're not exactly the same. Well, and I don't want to even say it that way either. You've got, let's see if I've got there it is, collections. You've got the ability to, and it's been a while since I've done this, so bear with me. New collection, include the same files, yes. And we're going to call this, all right, so I've just created a new collection of 10 files. And those collections are very similar to the collections here in Lightroom. Again, the difference is though, once I can no longer view this folder, then those images, even though they're in this nice collection, also I don't believe are viewable as well. I could be wrong with that. And yes, I can even create smart collections. So what I'm getting to is library and develop. So library would be like the thumbnail view in Bridge. Develop would be like the Camera Raw view in Bridge. And that's where the similarities stop. Everything to the right of the develop module becomes a Lightroom exclusive. So for example, there's no map module inside of Bridge. So if I have an image that has geo coordinates, it will show it to me in the metadata, which I don't know that these do. Yeah, it does. And I can make changes to it, but that's about it. If I have the geo coordinates here, which I do, and I switch over to the map module, it actually has Google Maps built in and will show me for whichever one I want it to show it to me on. It will let it take me to that spot. So we're looking at pyramids. I'm like, wait a minute, you got the Eiffel Tower selected, buddy. Let's head over to look at the Eiffel Tower. So that will take me to exactly where I was at the time when I shot the photo of the Eiffel Tower. So there's the Eiffel Tower right there. That's pretty much where I was standing. And I'll have some photos where I was standing behind it as well. And it will even, as I hover over that marker, it will show me the photos I took in that spot. So there's one, there's the other one. All right, so the map module, built in. The book module, again, built in. The ability to lay out books, whether they are professionally printed using Blurb or whether or not you're going to export them as JPEGs or PDFs. So I can lay out a multi-page print book right here. Now slideshow, even though Bridge has an output module that can output a slideshow as a file, and I believe, I don't know if Movie ever was added, but I know it can do PDF. It also gives me the ability in Lightroom to do a live show. So in other words, I can, let's pick a smaller collection, one that won't take forever. So let's do this one and we can preview this one. So I can preview this slideshow right here or show it to my audience with a projector or whatever. And yes, I can even, I hear some music playing in the background. I can even have music playing with this as well. So these are the kinds of things that, hang on, let's get out of this. Somehow I've lost my navigation. Hang on. I've lost my lighting. I'm not sure why my panels are no longer illuminated. So here we'll quit it. And we'll relaunch it. All right, but anyway, slideshows, the ability to not only generate slideshows, whether they be PDFs and or videos, but also an HD video as well, but also to incorporate music. And I also have the option at any time to do the slideshow live. Where I would not have those options in Bridge. All right, next up, let's talk about the print module. So the print module, again, this is one of those things where the minute I show it to a Bridge user, especially someone who's having to print files on a regular basis through Photoshop, that kind of ends the argument right there, if there's an argument. If they're saying, I don't need Lightroom, I can do everything I want in Bridge and Photoshop, and I would say, I'm not debating that you can do it. I'm just saying which one's easier to do it in faster. So for example, I've got a collection selected with 8 photos in it. If I want to print some or all of these, I can switch it, or even not even print, but just make JPEGs of the prints to print somewhere else. I can switch over to the print module. And in the print module, I've got presets, just like we had templates, or I'm sorry, we had presets in the develop module. We also have presets or templates in the print module. So I can select, for example, 3 files, and I can move this one around, and I can say, hey, I want to see the fronts of those cannons, and I want to move that one over, and then I print this out, and I get a 3-up, 8x10 wide with a black background and my logo at the bottom of it. So if I want to swap out for 3 other photos, just select 3 other photos and do the same kind of thing, and I've got the ability to do that. So those are the kinds of things that Bridge just can't touch. It can't touch this interactive preview for my printing, and the ability to go in and continue, the ability to go in, there we go, let's do that, and continue to tweak and work on this with the slider. So if I want less of a bottom margin, just select less of a bottom margin. This interactive live print space, it just can't be touched in Bridge or Photoshop for that matter. If you need to do this in Photoshop, you'd be creating contact sheets, and by the time you finished one, I'd be done with the whole job. I'd be doing all the different prints, all the different ways that I want it, including not just multiple shots, but also the ability in the built-in Lightroom templates to do picture packages. So a picture package is where you have one photo that you want to print in all the different sizes. B. Dungan, usually booting fast or wanting to boot faster is more of a job of your hard drive. So Edwin, while I agree more RAM can never hurt, speed of booting of applications is usually a function of how fast your drive is. So an SSD, if you don't already have one, would definitely speed up the booting of the applications. RAM starts to come in when it comes into the actual working inside the applications, where more RAM will definitely always help. All right, and a faster processor and a faster drive, and vicious cycle. So if I want to select that photo, I can quickly select that photo. And again, if I want to make any adjustments to these, for example, I can tweak these, I can delete part of them, I can move them around, I can create my own custom print layout any way that I want and not have to constantly go in and tweak layers and do all of that stuff manually inside of Photoshop. So, print module blows away Bridge and Photoshop. There's no comparison. If I just need to print something, one image, one page, yeah, okay, I can probably do it just as fast in either one. If I need to do anything beyond printing one picture on one page, Lightroom is always going to be faster at it. So the print module is one, in addition to map, book, slideshow, and now web. So web, same thing. It lets me create a web gallery of as many photos as I have selected. I told it to use only the selected photos. I could have just as easily said, just do the whole collection no matter which collection I select. So the web module will create an actual web gallery that you can upload to your hosting space, and people will be able to click on and make bigger and or click through the various photos to see what they look like as they're looking through your gallery. So all of that combined, there's just no comparison to the way Lightroom works as opposed to Bridge / and or Photoshop. So Jan's asking, what is fastest, RAM or SSD? Well, you're talking two different things. So an SSD is your hard drive. That is going to be faster for booting applications and booting the computer. RAM is going to be what your applications actually run in. So RAM is going to enable you to run more applications at the same time, work on bigger files, and just speed up the overall application itself. And whereas SSD is going to speed up things like saving, launching, booting, those kinds of things that are disk intensive. So two different things. SSD is a kind of hard drive. RAM is the memory chips that are in your computer. All right. Moving on. The other thing that where Lightroom kind of excels is in terms of the ability to get images out quicker in multiple formats. So for example, if I need to export these, what do I have here? 8 images. If I need to get these out fast, or get them out, I should say, I have the export module, including the ability to do presets. So I've got a preset already set up called Web Gallery, without copyright, Web Gallery with blank, which means it will put my stamp, my watermark on it. So if I go ahead and say that or choose it, and yes, I know these are already here, just go ahead and do it over again. It's exporting those 8 files out in the background. So I can keep working. I can do another one. I can say, you know what, and I also want them exported out for print. So I have one without copyright that would be for print. And yep, I know, overwrite that again. And what it's going to do now is you're going to see a second progress bar there. So it's doing 2 operations in the background. Once you start an operation, even in Camera Raw and Bridge, you can't do anything else to start another operation until the first one's finished. So it can't stack. It's not multi-threaded like this to stack up multiple things. And again, still allow me to keep working so I can still work on this photo and still do things, provided my computer's fast enough to do all 3 at the same time. I can still work on stuff while things are happening in the background. So the first export looks like it just finished, and it's about to show them to me, and here they are. And these are the ones from the web gallery. So if I look at one of these, it's probably going to have my watermark on it, which it does. And watermark, watermark, watermark. And even, by the way, that was something I took for granted. The fact that I was able to say export these with a watermark. Again, something Bridge just doesn't do or doesn't have the capability of doing. I would have to put them in Photoshop, run some kind of action to put a watermark on them, and then export them that way. So again, another photography workflow thing where I've got the ability to go right into Lightroom and edit watermarks right here. Create as many as I want, use them as different exports, as different options whenever I want. All right, so you have 32 gigs of RAM and a 3 terabyte SSD slash Fusion, HD Fusion drive. Okay, so the Fusion drive, no matter what size it is only partly an SSD. So imagine it's two drives combined into one. It has a small portion of storage that's the SSD, and it has the rest of the storage, the larger portion, which is a regular spinning hard drive. The SSD portion is designed so it hopefully intelligently moves things to the SSD that you're using or working with on a regular basis, so they are faster, but it's not as fast. The overall drive is not as fast as a true 100% SSD drive. So a Fusion drive is great, faster than a regular drive, but not as fast as a fully SSD drive. And the reason why you have that 3 terabyte SSD Fusion is because a 3 terabyte regular SSD, even if they exist, I can't remember if I've ever seen a 3 terabyte one, but if they exist, would be very, very, very expensive compared to the Fusion drives. So the Fusion drives were a way to speed up a regular hard drive by adding an SSD part to it without having to add on the cost of making the whole thing an SSD. All right, and yeah, I agree. 32 gigs of RAM is probably plenty for what you're doing, depending on what you're doing, but it's probably plenty. That should be enough. So you're good to go. The only other thing you might consider is getting maybe a smaller SSD drive to put your operating system on and your applications on. So make it your boot drive. Keep the Fusion drive for everything else. That way, your applications and operating system would always be booting from an SSD, and all your data would be on the Fusion drive. All right. Yeah, exactly. 10 terabyte SSDs, but not at a consumer price. Yeah, 10 terabyte, wouldn't that be nice? All right. Yep, RAM definitely helps for video editing. RAM helps for everything, but you reach a point to where if you're not really working on anything big, where you have enough. Yep, content aware crop was also added to Photoshop a few days ago, last Tuesday as a matter of fact, when I showed it. And a week from today, a week ago today. All right, so that is a little bit of your differences between between Lightroom and Bridge, which includes Camera Raw. And now let's talk about, well, okay, I kind of maybe now start to see the differences of when I'd use one versus the other from a photo management standpoint, but when would I use one versus the other for editing? And this is the one that always comes up a lot. Someone will say something like, hey, I'm a Lightroom user. When would I use Photoshop? Why do I need Photoshop? I never use Photoshop. What's it for? Why would I have that? Lightroom does everything I need. It could be. Or you'll have the opposite. I have Photoshop. Why would I ever use Lightroom? What's Lightroom going to do for me? So I kind of already showed a lot of what Lightroom will do for you that Photoshop won't. Because Photoshop, unless you add Bridge to it, doesn't manage photos at all. Photoshop's an image editor that simply opens up images one at a time or multiple images open at one time, and it edits them, allows you to edit them. That's it. It doesn't, once you save and close them, it doesn't know about them anymore. Once they're out of the recent images menu or recent files menu. So, isn't Lightroom branded as Photoshop Lightroom these days? Lightroom has always been branded Photoshop Lightroom. It's not just these days. From day one, it was always Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. We just call it Lightroom for short because it's just quicker than saying Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. So that was what it was called from day one. I'm going to Paris to make photos. I always look forward to going to Paris to make more photos. So thanks one at a time, one. Okay, so anyway, let's go on. And let's talk about, Let's grab one of these. All right. So now let's see the differences between, and you know what, let's do one more. Let's see the differences between Photoshop editing and Lightroom editing from an editing standpoint. Let's see what I've got in here. No, I'm just looking for one more thing here. Hang on for a minute. Okay, we'll put that one in there. All right, and we get it out of there. Okay. Oh, actually, I put in the wrong one. Let's do it in here. Or did I put in the right one? I did put in the right one. Okay. So we've got some portraits in here. We've got some products. We've got at least one product shot. We've got an animal shot. We've got just some stuff sitting on a desk, some fake flowers. We got just all kinds of images here. Depending on what the image is and how much you need to do to it, for me, that always determines where I'm going to do my edit. In other words, if I just need to do a few things, a couple basic things, yeah, I can probably do it all in Lightroom. Matter of fact, I probably will do it all in Lightroom. As a matter of fact, I just want to find, I still don't have an example I really want to use. Let's do a different one here. Oh, I know where I can get one. Hang on, let's do this. Let's go here. Ah, perfection. These are great. Okay. Let's grab a couple of these, but I don't want to mess up my originals, so we're going to make virtual copies. Another Lightroom advantage. All right, so I made virtual copies, which means I've got copies I can mess with that will not mess with the original. And they won't take up any extra space. So I've got those I put them all in here now, so everything's in here that I want to work with. Okay, so the virtual copies are here, something I can do in Lightroom, something I can't do in Bridge. And now I've got the ability to do anything I want to any of these images, to do anything I want. So for example, let's say that I want to take this, actually I kind of like this one better. Take this butterfly and I want to make some changes to it. Well, first I might want to look at it a little bigger. So I can hit the letter F to go to full screen, which is something I can do in Lightroom. I can also do in Bridge. And I can start to see more of it, and then I start examining, okay, I see a couple little things on the flowers. I might want to like fix some of these little white spots. I might want to adjust the overall exposure, maybe some sharpening on the wings or things like that. So I start looking at things I might want to do. Then I start deciding, or I start thinking, okay, can I do it all in Lightroom? Is there a way to make a dragon a chicken in Lightroom? No. So I'll start saying, okay, can I do it all in Lightroom? If the answer is yes, what's up, Camp? Is that Camp Onk or Componk? If the answer is yes, then I'll do it all in Lightroom. If the answer is no, then I'll do some of it in Lightroom, as much as I can, and then do the rest in Photoshop. So let me show you the difference. So I've got this butterfly here. I can now hit the letter D or click on Develop, take it over to the Develop module, and then in the Develop module, I can now start to edit. And everything in Lightroom is non-destructive, meaning if I just make any changes whatsoever, I can always come back today, tomorrow, 2 years from now, and whatever, and take those changes away or readjust those changes. So that's why people like working or editing as much as they can in Lightroom, because they don't have to worry about making a copy of the file, duplicating layers or anything like that. Matter of fact, there are no layers because it's always non-destructive. So for example, there's some changes been made to this already, but let's say that I want to increase the exposure. Again, I'm going to exaggerate this for the sake of example. I can bump up the exposure and make that nice and bright. Actually, I'm kind of liking it. I can adjust the shadows. Okay. I can adjust the whites and the blacks. And everything is easy because it's a slider. If I want to adjust the color temperature, which is the tone of it, even though it looks okay, I can make it a little cooler or a little warmer. So I can adjust that as well. Any of these I can play around with and not have to worry about damaging the photo. So if I want to adjust the contrast, I can. If I want to adjust the saturation of those colors, make it very too much overly saturated, I can. Or take the saturation away, I can. So I can play around with any of these things. Vibrance, take the vibrance down, take the vibrance back up. And that's great. I get the ability to do that. So you might be saying, well, those are all good overall adjustments. But what if I want to make specific adjustments? For example, there's a white spot right here on this part of the flower. I just want to get rid of that spot. Can I do that? Well, yes, you have what are called global adjustments in Lightroom, which we just did. You also have local adjustments in Lightroom, which is everything on this bar, except the crop tool. All right, so a local adjustment, for example, there has always been a spot removal tool in Lightroom. Now, some people, now that you can drag it in like a brush, some people even think of it or call it the healing brush. And I just want to be very clear. It's not the healing brush from Photoshop. It's got healing capabilities. It's got a healing option, but it is still the spot removal tool. So I can make my brush bigger or smaller with the bracket keys. I can click and voila, it removed the spot. And that's great. And if I want to like get a bunch of it all at once, then I can make my brush smaller. And I can drag it like a brush. This came out in Lightroom, I believe Lightroom 5 is when we got the non-circular healing brush. And it will do it. Great. And notice what it's doing is it's picking, it randomly finds a spot that it wants to pick up from, but you can move that around. I can say, no, move it over here, get it from this spot, and then that becomes your new heal. And again, all of these are non-destructive. If I want to get rid of that spot, I can just delete it or readjust it or remove it at any time. If I want to do this one, now this one is going to be tricky because it's on the edge, but it worked. It just picked another spot on the edge and did it. I want to do this one, make it a little bit bigger. Great. It, again, detected that was an edge and found another edge. So far, so good. This is doing a really good job so far of trying to make adjustments and intelligently pick good spots to clone from or pick from. And in that case, it's not such a good spot. So I can move it around and say, no, I'd rather move it over here and let it do its thing from that spot. And I can keep going through the whole photo and making these adjustments. Non-destructively. So here's the difference. While Lightroom let me do this non-destructively, easily, quickly, all in one program, it's not going to be the fastest way of doing this. Because what's going to happen is eventually you're going to want to fix something like this. And you're going to either say, okay, do I make just a bigger spot there and a smaller spot there? Or do I try and do it all at once? And you're going to make that decision. And then it's going to not quite look the way you want it. So you're going to try and move this around. You might even switch from cloning to healing. And you're going to just start saying, oh, I got it too close there. And oh, it's not close enough there. And then, oh, wait, maybe that one's okay. And you spend a lot of time doing that one adjustment, just trying to get it to match in the right spots where you wanted it. Whereas that would have taken me all of 2 seconds to do that in Photoshop. So you just reach a point to where, yes, there are a lot of things I can do in Lightroom and a lot of things I will do in Lightroom. But then there's some things that either can't be done in Lightroom that can be done in Photoshop or are just faster to do in Photoshop, even though they won't be as non-destructive. So I'll put this tool back. I'll also show you, hang on, went zoomed in there. I'll show you one more kind of thing you can do. Let's see, let's use our adjustment brush. So the adjustment brush is a brush. It lets me make adjustments. based on any of these things. So I can adjust the exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, black, clarity, dehaze, saturation, sharpness, noise, moire, defringe, all based on a brush. And it does come with presets. So for example, if I wanted to use saturation, I can switch to saturation, which zeroes everything else out. That's why I love the presets. And I can just take down the saturation of a specific spot. So if I want to take down the saturation of this leaf, I can make my brush smaller. Smaller, not bigger. Smaller. And I can start painting. And I'm doing this with a mouse, which is killing me. So let me switch to my graphics tablet here. And I can just start painting this so that I can take this saturation of color out of this. And it's happening. It's taking a few seconds to catch up with me with all the strokes, but it is happening. And keep going. Wait a few seconds and it'll catch up. Wait a few seconds, it'll catch up, and it did. And I'm now taking some of the red out of the middle of this. Now, because that dot is there and it's a local adjustment that is always going to be there until I get rid of it, I can go in and say, hey, I want that more saturated instead of less. Or I want the saturation completely gone in those spots. So I can always come in and adjust everything I did. If I take the saturation completely out, then I can also more easily see spots I missed. So I can come around and do things like this. Now, one of the problems I have with the adjustment brush is that a lot of times it's lagging behind me. I have to wait to see it or wait to see what I've done, take my finger away and let it catch up. Whereas in Photoshop, usually you're going to see it in real time as you're doing it. Okay, so but I made that adjustment non-destructively and I can keep readjusting it to my heart's content. Again, something not easily done inside of Photoshop. Not as easy anyway. All right, so I have adjustment brushes, I have a spot removal tool, I have a gradient filter, and I have a radial filter, and red eye reduction and pet eye reduction. Those are my adjustments that I can do in addition to all the global adjustments. So let's go one step further here. Two steps further, actually. So we have our radial filter, which is fairly new. That came out, I believe, in Lightroom 5. And radial adjustment, again, lets me choose a preset. So I can use exposure. And I can choose whether or not to invert the mask or not. And with the exposure setting, I can basically make that area of the photo like a highlight. In other words, a spotlight. I can just put a spotlight right in the middle of the photo. And again, this is infinitely adjustable. I can come in here and tweak this to my heart's content. Like so. And even though I started with exposure, that doesn't mean I can't do other things. So if I want to do in that circle or in that ellipse, if I want to do brighten the highlights or lower the highlights, I can do whatever I want. I can also feather the mask. Now, you also have a vignette capability, which is very similar. But the thing I like about the radial filter is that the radial filter lets me do it in more than one spot. So for example, if I want to do it there, I've got a new one now. And again, I can set that one to exposure. And that one will now adjust that one spot. So, and again, what people love about this is it's all non-destructive. If I come back tomorrow and say, oh, delete that one, delete this one, readjust that one, readjust the whole photo, reset the whole photo, I haven't lost a single thing. I've been working on this entire photo non-destructively, and I didn't have to worry about layers, and I've even done it on a virtual copies where I don't have to mess up my original or mess with my original. Okay, that's what Lightroom does. That's also what Camera Raw does. What does Photoshop do? Photoshop is going to let me edit any of these in any way that I want. It's not as non-destructive, but I have no limits on what I can do. So for example, let's say that, all right, someone's asking, can you change the ISO or aperture? You can't change the ISO or aperture because those are built in. Those are captured in the image. You can fake it. So for example, if your ISO produced too much noise, there's noise reduction. If you want to simulate depth of field a different way with blurring, you can in Photoshop. But as far as changing ISO and changing those settings, you can't, because those are baked into the photo. But good question. All right, so if I want to, for example, on this one butterfly we were already in, let's say I wanted to make another copy of it. I want to put a smaller butterfly facing the other way. I can't do that in Lightroom because Lightroom has no layering and no compositing capabilities. It has no ability to warp or change an image in any kind of way. It's all adjustments. So when you start saying, I want to composite, I want to add text, I want to duplicate, I want to clone, I want to start changing pixels themselves, that's when you have to leave Lightroom and go to Photoshop, and that's where Photoshop's going to do a better job, or let you do it at all. So for example, if I hit Command E or Control E in Windows, that will always offer me the ability to edit this in Photoshop. I get a choice of editing the original JPEG. If I choose this option, that'll edit the original that this virtual copy was made from without any of the adjustments I just made. If I say edit a copy, it will edit a copy without any of the adjustments I just made, but it will not edit the original. If I say edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments, it will make a new JPEG with the adjustments we just made baked into that new JPEG. The original one will be untouched. So if I do this, it will make my copy, it comes into Photoshop. Now you're in Photoshop to do whatever you want to do. You don't like that highlight? Get rid of it. Grab your patch tool and patch it out. Done. That would take you a lot longer in Lightroom to use the spot removal tool to try and get it to look just right. Whereas in Photoshop, it takes me 2 seconds. Also, let me undo that for a second. Let me put that back. If I did kind of want to work non-destructively, meaning have a way back to this photo, then I could duplicate the layer. And that way, now when I make that adjustment, I'm making it to the copy of that layer here in Photoshop, not to the original. If I want to select this butterfly, I can use the new select and mask features from any of my selection tools. I can also use the just quick select to start my selection, because you're going to make a selection no matter what. So pick whatever tool you want to make to start with. And we'll go ahead and make our selection here. Continue making it, continue making it, continue making it. All right, we got our selection made, our initial selection. We got part of the flower there that we don't want, so let's make our brush smaller. Hold down our Option or Alt key and subtract that out and add this back in. All right, now that I have a selection made, I can go to, oh, I missed a piece right there. I just visually walk my way around it, and I see some other spots I missed. And if I like that selection, then I don't have to go to the new select and mask. But if I go to the new select and mask, then I get the ability to onion skin that or see it on a particular, see it in a particular way. See it on black, see it on white to kind of see if I missed anything. Always have the ability to do a smart radius around it to include more of it, less of it. And once I get the selection that I want, I can output that selection to a new layer with a mask, to a new document, to just a new layer if I don't need to mask it, but I'll say new layer with a mask, click OK. And now I've got that duplicate butterfly on its own layer. So now that it's on its own layer, I can pick it up, move it around. I can free transform it. So Command T, make it smaller, flip it around, bring it over here, make it smaller yet, and put that anywhere that I want to put it. Once I'm done doing the kinds of, and by the way, I can see in that mask there's an edge. Paint that edge out. There we go. Once I'm done doing anything I want to do in Photoshop, which by the way includes adding text, I will have my layered file. So I've got some black text that's hard to read. And we will change that to an easier color, which includes picking a color from the photo. All right, and once I'm happy with it, I'm just playing, but let's say I'm happy, I save it. That will save my layered file. I don't have to merge it down, don't have to do anything like that. And close it, switch back to Lightroom, and it's there. So it adds it automatically back in, it saves it to the same folder as the other butterfly, puts it in the same collection that I left in, meaning the one I was in Lightroom when I started. And now I've got the ability to export that, use it as a slideshow, put it in a book, put it on a map, put it in or use it in the print module or the web module. It's just like any other image that was in Lightroom. Well, even though that one didn't come directly from a camera. It came from a camera and then it got modified in Photoshop. So that's why Photoshop will always do things that Lightroom and Bridge, Camera Raw just can't do. Because it has a compositing engine. It's got layers, it's got text, it's got a gajillion effects and filters. It's got all kinds of things that, while Lightroom is great for managing my photos and doing global and some local adjustments, it just can't do all the things that Photoshop can do. So when a person asks me, well, when do I need Photoshop? I'll turn around and say, when you want to do things that Lightroom can't do. Or when you want to do certain things faster. That's when you turn to Photoshop. So I'm a portrait photographer, and therefore I photograph lots of people. And so when I'm working on a portrait, like this one right here, of Kelvin, I'll look at this portrait and I'll say, okay, I see a little acne issue right there that I can make adjustments to. I'll see, color looks good, everything else looks good. I might see some other things if I zoom in more that I might want to tweak, but for the most part, the image looks okay. And so now I'll make a decision. Here, we'll make a virtual copy of it. And I'll make a decision as to, okay, well, first let's do as much as we can here in Lightroom. So go back to the Develop module, and I'll do things like, I always start with the sharpening preset, and someone asked me the other day, why do you sharpen at the beginning and not the end? And I answered, so I won't forget, and that's true, so I won't forget. All right, so we'll do sharpen faces. You sharpen at any point of the process you want. I usually always adjust the vibrance a little bit, because colors can always be a little bit more vibrant. On clarity, I'm a little lenient on it because it depends on what I'm working on. If it's a person, I don't use as much clarity. If it's an object landscape thing, then I'm usually going to use a lot of clarity. But I can pump up the clarity on a guy more so than I would a female subject, and because their skin can look hard and harsh, and it's okay. And women, we don't want their skin to look hard and harsh. Contrast. Bump up the contrast just a little. And I'd also look at my histogram here and see if I have any problems in the clipping of the shadows or blown out highlights. I don't have a ton, but we'll make an adjustment there. And if I hold down my shift key and double click on the blacks and double click on the whites, that'll set a more dynamic range or higher dynamic range for the entire photo. And again, it may throw off some of my other settings that I just made, but I can go back and remake those if I need to. For example, I don't want it to clip the shadows, even though it gave me the higher dynamic range. And then I can go in and say, okay, the stuff here, if it was just this one spot, yeah, spot removal tool might do it. So let's grab the spot removal tool. Let's go ahead and paint that one spot that we want to take care of. See what happens. And not bad, but I would probably pick it up from over here somewhere. Or maybe not. Let's see. Maybe right there. That would blend in a little bit better. But then if I start looking around and saying, well, there's a spot I'd want to get rid of. There's some acne I want to get rid of. There's some acne. If I start doing that, then I'm probably going to say, you know what? And then I start saying, oh, yeah, there's a few hairs I might want to trim here. And there's that thing right there. And maybe I want to sharpen the eyes and reduce some of the lines on the eyes. When I start saying all that, that's when it's time to say, okay, you've done as much as you're going to do here in Lightroom. Could I do it all? Sure. But I'm going to spend 2 to 3 times more time on this photo than if I just go to Photoshop. So I love tone curve too. But anyway, once I've got this set, as much as I'm going to do in here in Lightroom, Command E or Control E on Windows, and that'll take it over to Photoshop. And now notice it didn't ask me about making a copy or anything. Because it's a raw file, it automatically makes a copy because it can't edit the original raw file. If you want, yeah, you can duplicate the layer. I usually don't, but you can. And now I can go in and I can start using things like my, hang on, I'm on the wrong tool set here. There we go. Oh, no, it's still not right. Hold on. Edit toolbar. Load preset. There we go. Loading my retouching toolbar. There we go. All right, so I can go in and, by the way, work with a custom toolbar, which is new in Photoshop CC. And I can just quickly start to get rid of some of the things that were bothering me in what I saw in Lightroom that just would not be able to get removed or taken care of this fast in Lightroom. So yes, it can be done, but how much time will it take you? Yes, it will be non-destructive, but how much time will it take you to do it? So just, my time is important to me. And also the tools in Photoshop are just going to be more accurate for this kind of stuff. Now I'm only doing his right side of the face, or my left side. Oh, hang on, I don't like that. Let's put that back. So if I wanted to get rid of those lines completely, I would just do something like this. And just blend them in up there. Get rid of them that way. Well, you're welcome, Victoria. And we've only got a few more minutes in this great stream. And then we're going to hand it over to, I believe, Molten Ink. So, this is why I say you can't really replace one with the other unless you never need to do this much local adjustments. Cliff 1F, this is a Wacom Cintiq 27 QHD. All right, so in the eyes here, one of the things that I like to do is reduce the amount of lines, but not necessarily remove them completely because it looks a little unnatural, depending on the subject. So what I'll do is I might patch them out completely. And then while that patch is still selected, because if you deselect, you're going to screw it up. While it's still selected, Command H or Control H to hide it, and then go up to the Edit menu and come back in and fade patch selection. And this way I can bring back some of the lines to make it look a little bit more natural without bringing back all of it. So we can reduce it by 70% or so, or 23%, whichever way you look at it. And click OK, and that becomes the new adjustment. All right. And you can, I mean, just really go in and do as much as you think you need to do. Had to deselect there, I was still trying to do it on the other area. So things like a sharpening tool. I don't have a sharpening tool. I have an adjustment brush in Lightroom, but I have an actual sharpening tool where I can go in and sharpen up that earring a little bit better. And where I might want to go in and remove some of the stray hairs here in the beard. Again, if I did that with the spot removal tool, it would take 3 times longer, because the spot removal tool was always designed to remove spots. Even though now it has non-circular abilities and healing, it's just nowhere near as fast and as good as the healing brushes in Photoshop. All right, so we zoom out. Again, we can keep working on that. The other thing I might want to do is maybe I want to make some adjustments using Liquify. So we'll set that filter to a smart, what was the selection adjustment again? Depends on which selection adjustment you're talking about. If you're talking about select and mask, that is new as of last week in Photoshop CC. If you're talking about something else, I don't know what the something else is. All right, so let's go into filter. Let's convert for smart filters. And now that we've converted this for smart filters, we'll go into filter and liquify. And while we're here, face detection is also new inside of Photoshop CC. So for example, I could adjust things like his smile, so we can make him smile even a little bit more. Something that you probably won't see in Lightroom, because that would be a destructive adjustment. Make the lip a little bit, lower lip, a little bit bigger and or smaller. It's up to you. Face shape, forehead, play around with that. Ha 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 ha. All right, anyway, we're done with that. That's not what I came in here for. What I came in here for was this part of his jacket that's sticking up a little bit. So we'll just go ahead and push that down. There we go. And again, adjustments that Lightroom just can't and probably won't do anytime soon, unless they find a non-destructive way of doing it. All right, and there we go. Okay, so click OK. Before, after, before, after. Okay, you're welcome, Renee. What was the selection? Oh, that was, yes, that was fade while still selected after doing the patch tool. Well, actually, fade is there for most things you'll do in Photoshop, but you have to keep it selected while you do the fade, and then you can deselect. All right, so once I'm done, save. Saving, saving, saving. It's taking a little bit of time more to save it with that extra layer. 83%, and it stops, and then it's done. Okay, so go back to Lightroom, and there it is right next to the original. And again, we didn't make a huge adjustment to it, but here's the original. Actually, that's the original. And we'll zoom out. There we go. There's the original, and there's the Photoshop adjustment to it. So before, that's the real before, that's the after. So before, after. Before, after. Is there a fix for 16-bit for the Liquify tool? Yes, Renee, that came out like months ago. So yes, there is. That came out shortly after the bug was discovered. Hey Jason, what's up, man? So before and after, and let's see, there are 5 minutes left. So people that are again asking, when do they use one versus the other? And I hope I've answered that now in showing you a little bit of Bridge, a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of Lightroom, and what they all excel at. Yes, there's overlap. There's absolutely overlap between them. For example, they all have a way of using Camera Raw. In Lightroom, it's the Develop module. In Photoshop, it's Camera Raw. In Bridge, it's Camera Raw. So they all have that amount of overlap. But after that, then the differences start to become clearer. So for example, Bridge, yep, they can both see files. They can see images. They can rearrange them in collections. They can do things like that. They can add metadata and see the metadata. But then it starts to separate itself when Bridge can see other file formats other than just photos, and Lightroom just sees photos. And Lightroom can do a lot more with the photos, like maps and books and slideshows and print and web, whereas Bridge doesn't really have all that built in. So, and Photoshop, of course, being a pixel editor from its inception. Could we see more Photoshop? Well, what do you want to see in 3 minutes in Photoshop? And secondly, yes, not only is my good friend Beetlejuice here lurking and checking us out, but everyone say happy birthday, Beetlejuice. It's Jason's birthday today. So happy birthday, one of my colleagues and streamers as well. Jason will be on Friday after me, I believe. Or maybe not. I don't know. I think he's going back to San Francisco, so maybe he won't be on this Friday. But Jason streams here on a regular basis, and even on his own channel on a regular basis. So happy birthday, Beetlejuice, and thanks for dropping by. All right, so yeah, I don't know what else I could show you in only a few minutes' time, but there is one thing. What I got? 2 minutes. Let me think about it for a second. See if I have a good example I can show. Let's go to here. And let's go here. Let's open up this one. I'm deciding if I want to open it first. All right, so let's do two things real quick. We got literally 2 minutes left. Head over to the Develop module. One of the things that's new here in Lightroom is the ability to do the guided upright, which I did not show. This is also in Camera Raw. So when I do the guided upright, I can say, hey, this street kind of looks a little crooked. The buildings are leaning over a little bit. So I can start saying, well, you know what? I would love it if this line were straight. And I would love it if this line were straight. And as soon as I make at least 2 corrections, it starts to straighten things out. All right, and I can keep going. I can say, you know, this rooftop should be straight, which actually it shouldn't be, or this canal line should be straight. But once you get it straight the way you want it, then you can say done, and then we can open it. Go ahead and edit and open this up in Photoshop. And that'll open up a copy in Photoshop. And one last thing in my less than 60 seconds is the new content-aware cropping. So if I hit the letter C, turn on content-aware, and if I were to rotate this to be straighter, you notice that it will fill in, or attempt to fill in, those areas that were going to be cropped out of it. So I don't know how good it will do on the buildings, but we'll see in just a second. And it is now cropping this photo. All right, in 20 seconds, we have our molten ink is up next, and it did the crop and the content-aware fill in all the way around, even the area of the buildings, even though there's a little gap there that I'll probably fix. So with that said, guys, take care. Thanks for watching. Happy birthday, Beetlejuice. And we'll catch you on this Friday for more of the same. Cheers, everybody. Take care.